This, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is Bruce. Probably one of my more successful hybrids. It's been going around the oceans, pretty much taking out any competition that stands in its path. And it's been fortunate enough to connect with quite a few people, to the point of it being considered to be one of the most powerful hybrids in the aquatic hybrids meta. Even so far enough as that it was given its own species name, Carcharius sadisticus, which, if you ask me, seems like a pretty fitting species name for the sharkopath. So, this is episode 10. It's a special episode, because we'll be taking on the closest thing to Vex that I could find. Before that though, I wanted to shed some light on another hybrid that was sent to challenge me, as well as it was also sent to challenge Zane, Reborn and Kamikaze, as well as Paracer Genetic Tech and the Dracocetus 2.0. Stupent is an electric eel hybrid, and honestly isn't very good. So, starting off, the size for the Titanoboa, as we saw from Anguis congensis that faced Vex, this would not only make this hybrid incredibly slow, as we can see from its speed, but it would also make it very stiff and nearly impossible to even move. And also, then there's the whole problem with how it releases its shocks. See, electric eels develop electricity throughout their entire body through special muscle blocks, but the shock isn't being released throughout the whole body, it's just at the tail. So, not only is the shock going to be greatly reduced, but the fact that the creature's covered in hard, tough arapaima scales means that while it's fairly well defended, the electricity has nowhere to escape from, so thus it would end up electrocuting itself. Also, the stonefish spines aren't really the most useful. They're mainly used for defense, and the only real way that would be useful for weapons is if a creature was dumb enough to bite or ram into them. So yeah, this hybrid wasn't ready for battle, which is why I'm showcasing it here and didn't bother to draw it out. So let's get into the actual main hybrid of the video. This is Nyx. At first glance, she just looks like a regular old orca. And yes, you're right, orca is the main base of this creature. But there are quite a few other contributors that make her stand out. Now, I am going to be going through the contributors a bit fast because there's 15 of them. That includes orca as the base. You also have the Curvier's beaked whale to enhance this creature's diving capabilities, allowing it to dive to rather low depths. The long-finned pilot whale provides the fins for better speed, as well as its sociality, since these whales are more social than orcas, allowing them to travel in larger pods. Bottlenose dolphin, as you might expect, enhances intelligence, as well as providing its melon and ear, so that puts it pretty much equal with Bruce in terms of smarts. Ankylorhiza, this extinct cetacean, gives the creature's head, as well as providing it with some teeth. Leopard seal gives the creature more teeth in the form of its molars, as well as its sexual dimorphism. Usually with orcas, the males are larger than the females, but in this case, it's going to be the females are larger than the males. But the size of this creature is also something to be debated about, because Nyx was stated to be 36 feet 11 tons. Not even the largest orcas weigh that much, or that big. The largest orca that we know of only grew to around 32 feet and 10 tons. I feel like this might be a case of someone trying to get away with adding a few feet without me doing the research. But, too bad. I am a harsh hybrid judge, so nothing slips through the cracks. This creature is slightly oversized, but not too much that it's not a major issue. The southern elephant seal enhances its diving capabilities, with the ability to have more blood, as well as store more oxygen in the blood. So far, Nyx has been looking pretty good, but it kind of goes a bit downhill from here. Prionosuchus was added for its mucus glands. These glands were combined with the mucus production of the black marlin, since These fish produce mucus that is able to help reduce drag, improving their speeds. And with Bruce also containing billfish in the genome, it potentially also gives him the same mucus-producing abilities. However, Nyx's mucus production is full of cephalotoxins, courtesy of the octopus. Now, I'm no big expert on this, so I might be wrong, but I feel like changing this mucus production with the toxins from a cephalopod might end up compromising on Nyx's speed. And also, then again, it probably won't affect the sharkopaths anyway, because sharkopaths are opportunistic eaters, just like every other shark. They'll try pretty much anything once to see if they'll like it. And that probably includes octopuses. The mid-water squid provides Nyx with photophores, allowing it to appear pretty much invisible when sort of looking at it in a certain way. Now, already this creature isn't the most congruent due to having so many life forms in the genome, but the congruity in this creature is about to nosedive, since the last 4 creatures are all land animals, simply sort of semi-aquatic land animals, which I'm honestly a bit skeptical about because they're not fully aquatics. Now, justification of this was back to the Anguis congensis, the giant snake that fought Vex. It used Gaboon Viper as part of its components, and they're also not fully aquatic animals. Then again, the very definition of an aquatic animal is an animal that spends most of, if not all its time, in or around water. Just adding the word water onto something doesn't necessarily mean it's aquatic, but in this case, since it's a special occasion, we'll give Nyx a bunch of free passes, as they use Eurasian water shrew for the same reason everyone uses shrews. This was basically a cheap way to get iron teeth into this aquatic creature, as well as its unique venom glands to produce its venomous saliva. Except Bruce actually has stronger teeth due to it being used from the bumphead parrotfish, since fluoropatite is stronger than iron. I mean, if they wanted stronger teeth, they could have just used a parrotfish. It would have worked much better than a shrew would, and it works better in congruence. The Amazon giant leech is the main contributor to the venom from this creature's saliva, adding a special component into its venom. I forgot what its name was. I think it's hemoglobin. No, it can't be hemoglobin. That's the stuff you find in the blood. It was H something, I think. But anyway, this is another problem because with the toxic mucus already coming from the cephalopod, the octopus, and extra different venom coming from the leech, this creature will have to produce 2 different kinds of venoms, meaning its metabolic demands are going to go into overdrive. With this creature being so big, it'll need to eat a lot of food, which means it's not really sustainable. It could definitely survive, but would need to eat a lot to produce this kind of double toxins. Another example of using land animals, the water opossum was added for its strong immune system, like all opossums possess. But the strong immune system, it mainly applies to things like snake bites. And last I checked, well, there are sea snakes in the ocean, but Bruce is a shark, and he's not venomous in pretty much any way. The only way he is really venomous is due to his toxic flesh, which comes from the Greenland shark. But then again, that's not a true venom, since Bruce isn't working to produce the venom. In other words, it's already kind of a stretch whether or not I should include this creature in the genome, or if it's violating a rule of aquatics only. But I'll let it slide, because it definitely does its job, but just there are more congruent picks out there, like tiger sharks. The last contributor is the Nile ornate monitor, for 2 things. The first one being its tooth replacement. It allows it to replace its teeth, similar to a lot of sharks. And also parthenogenesis, similar to the Indom 2.0's ability with whiptail lizard DNA, allowing Nyx to produce pretty much identical clones of herself. So to summarise, Nyx is an orca hybrid that's been slightly oversized, having to produce multiple toxins, meaning her metabolic rate would go through the roof, as well as having some rather questionable contributors, possibly risking disqualification due to really stretching the definition of aquatics. But it's still more functional than Vex, and thus it probably will be the closest thing we ever get to fighting Vex. So, now let's get down to the big fight. After dispatching Kamikaze in the Atlantic, Bruce and his pack of sharkopaths move further south, where they entered the Benguela. This is a current located on the west coast of Africa, and it is just teeming with sharks. There are a lot of sharks here. It's a shark hotspot. But as Bruce and the sharkopaths enter this supposedly shark-infested current, they're kind of shocked to find it being littered with dozens of just dead sharks. Like, the sharks are just dead. They've barely even been eaten. Some of them have some bite marks taken out of them, but most of them have been dead and just left there to rot. Bruce ends up detecting something not very normal, possibly the culprit of what's been causing these shark deaths, and leads his pack in to confront it. This eventually leads them to meet Nyx, and she is not alone, with 4 others of her same species. Not exactly offsprings, or even relatives anyway, but rather more clones of herself, with all the same benefits and weaknesses. With her looking pretty much identical to an orca, but aside from shorter fins and a longer head, Bruce is able to quickly dissect what Nyx is actually capable of, because Bruce was designed initially to fight off and specialise in hunting orcas. So, with it being a 5v5, the sharkopaths decide to use their tactics to hunt orcas to their advantage. With Nyx having bottlenose dolphin for intelligence, it means they're definitely smarter than an orca, but this ends up sacrificing a bit of their echolocating abilities. I'm pretty sure it was specified in the video that Nyx's echolocation is weaker than a regular orca, which means that the sharkopath's strategy discussed in his introduction video will actually work effectively. Bruce would essentially use the water as the camouflage, since the sharkopaths come in various different shades of blue, a lot of them matching the water that they travel in, which means that for Nyx the fight could be terrifying, as they wouldn't know where the sharkopaths are. The only way they'd really be able to tell where they are from sight is the bioluminescent patches that dot the sharkopath's flanks. Because Nyx is fairly quick for her size, at around 35 miles per hour, because this fight is happening near the surface, with a pretty much empty abyss below them. Even though, because the speed will definitely probably be reduced, because it's said to get up to 50 miles per hour, but that's sort of not going to be possible since this creature is over 5 times heavier than Bruce, who can get the same speeds. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, so we're sticking with the 35 mile per hour speed limit for the uppermost speeds. Although, unbeknownst to Nyx and the pod, this is exactly what Bruce and his pack want them to think. Purposefully get lured in with those patches, because as one gets lured in, another bursts up from the depths and rams into their unprotected underside. With Nyx lacking any kind of armour, and the sharkopaths really not caring about their own safety, or the toxins for that matter, then that much means one of the pod members is taken out of commission, as the blow ended up piercing vital organs. With Nyx and the pod starting to realise that these are no ordinary sharks, they start to try and gather up together and start to fight them. The fighting is chaotic and terrifying for both sides, and both sides suffer heavy casualties. Bruce, in particular, wanting revenge on these marine mammals, because, large whale-like hybrids were sort of the driving force that made these pack mates lost in the first place. So eventually it comes down to a 1v1. Bruce versus Nyx. with Bruce being much faster, he's able to avoid a lot of the attacks, but still gets whacked by the creature's tail. Yet he's able to roll out of the way before getting caught by Nyx's jaws. Eventually swirls back around and starts taking a chomp out of the fin, his teeth making very short work of it. Now normally, a matchup between a shark and an orca would seem like a very unfair fight. Most of the time we'd think the orca would win. However, sharks are starting to adapt to orcas' fighting strategies. They're learning to bait them out and punish them for it, which is exactly what Bruce is capable of doing, but to a much wider level because he's a lot smarter than an average shark. Capable of manoeuvring around Nyx, and as well as targeting pretty much any part of the body that he can bite into. Nyx is definitely a challenge to take down. Bruce definitely gets quite a few battle scars out of it. A lot of cuts, bruises, lost blood and lost packmates. But I believe that Bruce will be able to come out on top. After a long, hard-fought and bloody battle, Bruce eventually emerges victorious against Nyx, but is the sole survivor of the battle. But luckily for him, it's just a straightforward dash back to the Bay of Bengal, where he's able to reunite with the rest of his packmates, which have been doing wonders in clearing out the Bay of Bengal for him, only really leaving one known enemy left in his wake, stopping him from conquering the Bay of Bengal as the ultimate hybrid. And that enemy, they know very well who they are. They can try and avoid the sharkopaths all they want, but he'll eventually get their way. The fight will eventually happen with or without their consent. The inevitable clash with Pike. Now, before I end, I just wanted to thank a lot of people who have been watching Bruce's battles. I mean, Bruce has probably become one of my most successful hybrids, possibly rivaling Harvey, my pterosaur. Speaking of Harvey, I'll have some stuff planned for him. This stuff probably won't be coming to fruition till next week, though, because, I have a life outside of the hybrid war. I feel like some people are just purely focused on it. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a while until a lot of things. I will still be accepting challenges for Bruce, but in the meantime, I'll be working on a certain special series for Harvey. A series where he'll be taking on the strongest flyers of the Skybrid War, the Apexes, fighting against them in 1v1 situations to see how well he'd stack against them and his chances of victory, and have quite the opening act planned. Basically, it's going to be Harvey versus his sort of admirer, the creature that he was based off of and improved upon. Episode 1 of Harvey's Hustles is set. Harvey against the Final 16's Valkyriopteryx.